I was stirring my Sunday pot when my phone rang. It was my sister Maxine, voice all shaky like she just run a marathon in her heels. Lana, I need you to take Shanice for a while. Things hard here and the girl need guidance. You always been good with young people. My niece, Shanice, just turned 18, bright-eyed, always smiling in them family photos. I hadn't seen her in person for 3 years, but blood is blood, right? How long is a while? I asked, still stirring. Maybe 6 months, a year tops, just till I get back on my feet. That was 5 years ago. And let me tell you, that girl didn't need guidance. She needed a whole GPS system for her moral compass. My name is Lana Mitchell. I'm 42 years old. And until that day my niece moved in with her 2 suitcases and her innocent smile, I thought I knew what family meant. I had been with Marcus for 8 years. He wasn't perfect, but he was mine. Or so I thought. Marcus worked construction, had strong arms and a laugh that could fill a room. We weren't married, but we were comfortable. He'd come over most evenings, eat my food, watch football on my couch, and make me feel like I wasn't alone in this world. When Shanice arrived, I fixed up my spare room nice. Fresh paint, new curtains, even bought her a little desk for schoolwork. The girl was supposed to be finishing her A-levels, trying to get into university. I wanted to give her what her mother couldn't: stability, peace, a proper home. For the first month, everything was sweet like sugar cake. Shanice helped with cooking, kept her room clean, even made me laugh with stories about her friends back home. Marcus liked her too. "Your niece is a good girl, Lorna," he'd say. "Polite, respectful. You're doing a good thing here." I was proud. Felt like I was being the auntie I was supposed to be. Then things started changing. Subtle at first, like when milk just starting to turn and you can't quite smell it yet. Shanice started dressing different. Nothing wrong with a young woman wanting to look nice, but suddenly every outfit was showing a little more than necessary. Tight jeans that she definitely didn't arrive with. Makeup that seemed too expensive for a girl with no job. Perfume that would announce her presence before she even entered a room. "Where you getting money for all these new clothes?" I asked her one evening, trying to sound casual. "Oh, Auntie, Mommy said me a little something," she said, not quite meeting my eyes. I knew my sister, Maxine, barely had money to send for herself, much less shopping money for Shanice, but I let it slide. Didn't want to seem like the strict, suspicious auntie. Then I noticed she'd started staying home more in the evenings when Marcus came over. Before, she'd go to her room, give us her space. Now she'd linger in the living room, laughing a little too loud at his jokes, asking him about his work, his life, his dreams. "Your niece is really growing up," Marcus said one night after she'd gone to bed. Something in his tone made my stomach turn, but I pushed it down. I was being paranoid. Shanice was family, Marcus was my man. Nothing could happen between them. Lord, how wrong I was. I worked at the hospital, usually the 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. shift. One day, I came home early because my supervisor was sick. I had a headache and was looking forward to some rest before starting dinner. I opened my front door quietly. My key turned smooth, no squeaking hinges. And I heard it. Laughter. His laugh. Her laugh. Coming from the living room. I stood in my own hallway like a thief, listening. "You really think I look good in this?" Shanice's voice, all breathy and young. "Girl, you know you look good. Stop playing." That was Marcus. I walked into my living room and found them sitting too close on my couch. Shanice was wearing one of those tight dresses, the kind that leave nothing to imagination. Marcus had his arms stretched across the back of the couch, not quite touching her, but close enough. They jumped apart like two children caught stealing biscuits. Lorna, you're home early. Marcus stood up, suddenly busy straightening his shirt. Shanice just looked at me with those big, innocent eyes, but I saw something else underneath. Something that looked almost like triumph. I live here, I said quietly. Why wouldn't I be home? That night, I didn't cook. I sat in my room and thought about every little thing I'd noticed over the past weeks. The way Shanice always made sure to look her best when Marcus was coming over. The way she'd suddenly developed an interest in football. The way Marcus started arriving earlier and earlier, sometimes even before I got home from work. I wasn't stupid. I was just a fool who didn't want to see. Over the next few weeks, I watched, and what I saw broke my heart and hardened it at the same time. They thought they were clever, but I'd been living life while they were still learning. I saw the looks they exchanged when they thought I wasn't paying attention. I noticed when Shanice started wearing the same perfume I'd seen in Marcus's car. I caught them texting each other while sitting in the same room with me. The final confirmation came on a Thursday evening. I told them both I was going to my friend Dawn's house for book club. Instead, I parked my car 2 streets over and walked back. I came through the back way, through my own garden, and looked through my kitchen window. There they were, in my living room, on my couch, kissing like two people who'd been starving for each other. His hands in her hair, her hands on his chest, in my house, on my furniture, in the space I'd built with my own sweat and sacrifice. I didn't storm in. I didn't scream. I didn't even cry. I stood there in my garden, looking at my niece, my own sister's child, stealing my man, and something inside me just went cold and clear. I walked back to my car, drove to Dawn's house for real, and told her everything. Girl, you need to put both of them out on the street tonight, Dawn said, already getting heated on my behalf. No, I said, surprising myself with how calm I felt. I'm going to do something better. That night, I came home and acted like everything was normal. Cooked dinner, watched TV, went to bed. Marcus kissed my cheek when he left, same as always. Shani said goodnight, same as always. But I had made a decision. The next morning, I called Marcus. We need to talk. He came over that evening, nervous like he knew what was coming. Marcus, I know about you and Shanice. He didn't even try to deny it, just sat there looking at his hands like they suddenly became the most interesting thing in the world. How long? I asked. Lorna, How long? About 2 months. 2 months! While I was cooking for him, washing his clothes, planning our future, he was sneaking around with my teenage niece for 2 months? Get out, I said quietly. Take your things and get out of my house. Lorna, let me explain. There's nothing to explain. A man who would do this with his woman's niece is not a man worth knowing. Get out. He left and I felt nothing. Or maybe I felt everything, but it was all wrapped up so tight inside me that it just came out as cold, hard clarity. Shanice came home from her study group an hour later. I was waiting in the kitchen. Sit down, I told her. She sat, trying to look innocent, but I could see the guilt swimming in her eyes. I know about you and Marcus. Her face went pale. Auntie, I can explain. No need. I just want to know one thing. Why? She opened her mouth, closed it, then opened it again. I don't know. It just happened. Nothing just happened, Shanice. You made choices. Every time you put on those tight clothes, every time you stayed in the living room when you should have gone to your room, every time you laughed at his jokes and touched his arm, those were choices. Tears started rolling down her face. I'm sorry, Auntie. I'm so sorry. Are you sorry you did it or sorry you got caught? She didn't answer. Couldn't answer. I said, you can stay here until the end of the month. That gives you time to figure out where you're going. After that, this arrangement is done. But Auntie, where will I go? That's not my problem anymore. You should have thought about that before you decided to disrespect my house. What about Marcus? And there it was. She actually thought I was going to let her have him, that she'd won something. I almost laughed. Marcus? Baby girl, you welcome to him. Any man who would do what he did is not a prize worth fighting for. You want him? You can have all of him and all his problems too. Over the next 3 weeks, I watched Shanice scramble. She called her mother, who told her exactly what I expected. You make your bed, no lie in it. She called Marcus, who suddenly wasn't returning her messages. Funny how that works. But I wasn't just sitting around watching her panic. No, I was making moves. See, for 8 years, I'd been living for Marcus, cooking the foods he liked, watching the shows he wanted to watch, saving money for the house we were going to buy together someday. I had a savings account with nearly £15,000 in it. Money I'd been putting away little by little, sacrificing things I wanted so we could have our future. But there was no we anymore. There was just me. I took that money and I made some decisions. First, I bought myself a car. Nothing fancy, just a reliable Honda that was mine, all mine. Not having to depend on buses or Marcus for rides anymore felt like freedom. Second, I went to see a woman named Mrs. Chen who ran a catering business. I'd been doing little side cooking jobs for years. Weddings, christenings, birthday parties, and people always said I should go professional. Mrs. Chen was retiring and looking for someone to take over her client list. How much? I asked her. She named a price that would take most of my remaining savings. I didn't even hesitate. I'll take it. Third, I started looking for a new place to live. My current house had too many memories, too much pain soaked into the walls. I found a nice little flat on the other side of town, closer to the hospital, with a big kitchen perfect for my new catering business. By the time the end of the month came, I was ready. Shanice packed her bags on a Friday morning. She'd found a place with some friends, or so she said. She looked smaller somehow, like the last 3 weeks had taken something out of her. Auntie Lorna, she said as she stood by the door with her suitcases, I really am sorry. I believe you are, but sorry doesn't undo what was done. Will you ever forgive me? Maybe one day, but forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, and it doesn't mean letting you back into my life like nothing happened. She left, and I stood in that house, my house, and I felt lighter than I had in months. I moved into my new flat 2 weeks later, painted the kitchen a bright yellow that made me smile every morning, set up my catering equipment, started building my business. And let me tell you something, I was good at it, better than good. Within 3 months, I had more orders than I could handle. People loved my food, loved my service, and most importantly, they paid me what I was worth. I wasn't cooking for free anymore, trying to prove my worth through Sunday dinners and packed lunches. I was a businesswoman, and business was booming. I heard, through the family grapevine, that Marcus had tried to get with Shanice for real after I kicked him out. Apparently, once he realized he wasn't going to have my house and my stability to offer him, he lost interest real quick. Last I heard, he was back living with his mother at 45 years old. Shanice moved from friend's house to friend's house, never staying anywhere too long. She dropped out of school, started working at a fast food place, barely making ends meet. I should have felt satisfaction, should have felt like justice was served. But mostly, I just felt free. 6 months after everything fell apart, I was catering a big wedding when my phone rang. Unknown number. Hello? Auntie Lorna? Yes? I I heard you started a catering business. People say you're doing really well. I am. I was wondering. I mean, I know I have no right to ask, but are you hiring? There it was. My niece, who had stolen my man, now begging me for a job. I could have said no. Should have said no, probably. Hung up and blocked her number and lived my life. But something in me, maybe it was the part of me that remembered her at 6 years old, helping me bake cookies. Or maybe it was just the part of me that was tired of being angry, made me pause. You know how to cook? I asked. You taught me, remember, when I first moved in with you. I did remember. Those early weeks when things were good, when I was teaching her how to make rice and peas the proper way, how to season chicken just right. I'm not promising anything, I said slowly, but I need someone to help with prep work this Saturday. Wedding for 150 people. If you show up on time, dress properly, and work hard, we'll talk about something more regular. Really? Hope flooded her voice. Auntie, thank you. Don't thank me yet. Show me you've changed. Show me through work, not words. She showed up that Saturday at 6 a.m. sharp. Hair tied back, wearing simple clothes, no makeup, ready to work. I put her on rice duty. I told her, wash it till the water runs clear, I told her. You remember how I taught you? Yes, Auntie. She washed that rice like her life depended on it. Worked all day without complaining, even when the kitchen got hot and we were all sweating and rushing. At the end of the day, when the last guest had been fed and we were cleaning up, she came to me. Auntie, I need to say something. Go ahead. What I did, there's no excuse. I was young and stupid and selfish, but that doesn't make it okay. I hurt you in the worst way possible. You took me in when my own mother couldn't, and I repaid you by betraying you in your own house. She was crying now, but she kept going. These past 6 months had been the hardest of my life. I lost my school, my home, my family's trust. I lost you, and I deserved all of it. But Auntie, I'm trying to be better. I'm trying to be the niece you thought you were getting when I first moved in. I looked at her, really looked at her. She'd lost weight, had circles under her eyes, looked older than her years. Life had given her the education I couldn't. I hurt you, Shanice, I said quietly. I hurt you in ways that still ache when I think about it. But I have learned something these past months. What? I've learned that sometimes people do terrible things because they don't know who they are yet. And sometimes the best revenge is not revenge at all. It's building something so beautiful that they can see what they almost destroyed. I handed her an envelope. Inside was a check for her day's work, more than she'd make in a week at the fast food place. You can work for me on weekends for now, I said. If you prove yourself, we'll talk about full-time. But understand this, you're not my niece here. You're my employee. You do the work, you follow my rules, and you earn your place. Nothing is given, everything is earned. Yes, Auntie. Thank you. And Shanice. Yes? If you ever disrespect me or my business the way you disrespected my home, you're done. No second chances. Clear? Crystal clear. She showed up the next Saturday, and the one after that, and the one after that. Slowly, carefully, she was earning back something that couldn't be given. Trust. I don't know if things will ever be the way they were before. Probably not. Some cracks can't be completely mended, only learned to live with. But here's what I know. I raised my standards higher than any man or any betrayal could pull them down. I built a business. I bought a car. I moved to a flat that feels like home. I wake up every morning proud of who I am and what I've accomplished. And when people ask me about Marcus, I just smile and say, who? Because that's the thing about betrayal. It only has the power you give it. You can let it destroy you, or you can let it remake you into something stronger, something better, something that can't be broken again. My friend Dawn asked me recently, do you regret taking Shanice in? I thought about it for a long time. No, I said finally, because if she hadn't come, I might have stayed comfortable. I might have married Marcus, spent my whole life cooking in his shadow, never knowing what I was capable of. So she did you a favor? She did us both a favor. She showed me I didn't need him, and she learned that actions have consequences. Sometimes the hardest lessons are the most important ones. These days, my catering business is thriving. I've hired 2 more people besides Shanice. We did 47 events last month. I'm looking at opening an actual storefront by the end of the year. Shanice still works for me on weekends. She's back in school part-time studying business management. We're not close the way we used to be, but there's a respect there that wasn't before. She looks at me differently now, not as the auntie she can take advantage of, but as a woman who knows her worth. And Marcus? I saw him last month at the grocery store. He tried to talk to me, but I just smiled politely and kept walking. In my cart was champagne for a celebration dinner I was catering. In his was instant noodles and cheap beer. That told me everything I needed to know. Sometimes people ask me if I'm bitter, if I'm angry, if I'm sad about how things turned out. And I tell them the truth. I'm grateful. Because that betrayal, as painful as it was, set me free. It forced me to see that I was living small, making myself smaller to fit into someone else's life. Now I live large. I live loud. I live on my own terms. And if someone can't handle that, well, there's the door. I don't cook to prove my worth anymore. I cook because I'm damn good at it, and people pay me accordingly. I don't need a man to make me feel whole. I'm already complete. And I don't need to forgive and forget to move on. I can forgive when I'm ready and still protect my peace. That's what I wish I could tell my younger self, the woman who was stirring that Sunday pot when her sister called asking for help. I'd tell her, girl, brace yourself, storm coming. But on the other side of that storm, you're going to find yourself, and she's magnificent. Did you like my story? Which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If you like the story, you can support me by liking and subscribing so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. On to the next, one I like to call the red dress at the funeral. I was watering my roses when Margaret Hartley walked past my fence with that look on my face. You know the one. The smile that's not quite a smile, more like a warning wrapped in politeness. Lorna, she called out, stopping at my gate. That's quite the outfit for gardening. I looked down at my floral sundress, the yellow one with the thin straps. Nothing scandalous, nothing improper, just a woman in her own yard on a Tuesday morning. It's comfortable, I said, turning back to my roses. Well, yes, but she paused, and I could feel her eyes traveling over me. Our age? Don't you think we should dress more appropriately, more dignified? I turned the hose off slowly. Our age? I'm just saying, Lorna, we're not 20 anymore. There's a certain way women of our generation should present themselves. Modest, respectable. She adjusted her beige cardigan as if to demonstrate. I mean, I wouldn't be caught dead in a dress like that at 67. Something cold settled in my chest. Not anger, not yet. Just a quiet noting of the moment, the way you mark the date on a calendar before a storm. Noted, Margaret. She smiled, satisfied, and continued her walk. I watched her beige cardigan disappear down the street, her sensible shoes clicking against the pavement in their predictable rhythm. My name is Lorna Mitchell. I'm 42 years old, and Margaret Hartley had just made a mistake she would remember for the rest of her life. Margaret and I had lived on Maple Street for over 40 years. Our children had grown up together, gone to the same schools, attended the same birthday parties. Our husbands had barbecued together on summer weekends. We'd been friends once, in that neighborly way where proximity creates connection. But that was before Richard. Margaret had married Harold Hartley 35 years ago. Solid, dependable Harold with his accounting firm and his golf handicap and his habit of falling asleep in front of the television every night at 9 o'clock. They had 2 children, both living in other states now, both too busy to visit more than twice a year. I had married Thomas Davis 42 years ago. Sweet Thomas, with his carpentry business and his gentle hands and his love of old jazz records. He died 15 years ago of pancreatic cancer, leaving me with a paid-off house, a small pension, and a closet full of dresses he'd always said made me look like sunshine. And then there was Richard. Richard Hartley, Harold's younger brother. The one who never quite settled down, never quite fit into the family mold. The one who showed up at family gatherings with paint on his hands and stories from art galleries in Paris and Prague. The one who, 23 years ago, had walked into my life at Harold's 50th birthday party and changed everything. I was standing alone on the patio that night, drinking wine and watching the couples dance. Thomas had been gone for 3 years, and I was still learning how to exist in spaces filled with paired-up people. You look like you'd rather be anywhere else, a voice said beside me. I turned to see a man with silver-streaked hair and the kind of eyes that actually looked at you, not through you. Is it that obvious? I asked. Only to someone who feels the same way. He extended his hand. Richard, the family disappointment. Lorna, the widow everyone pities. He laughed, and it was the first genuine sound I'd heard all evening. Well, Lorna, the widow everyone pities, would you like to escape this party and get real drinks somewhere quiet? I should have said no. I should have thought about Margaret, about Harold, about neighborhood politics and family dynamics, and all the reasons why this was complicated. Instead, I said yes. What happened next wasn't an affair. Not technically. Richard lived in Chicago, only visiting Maple Street a few times a year for obligatory family events. We met in the spaces between his visits, coffee shops in the city, art galleries, quiet restaurants where no one from the neighborhood would recognize us. We talked. That's what we did mostly. We talked about art and loss and the lives we'd lived versus the lives we'd imagined. He told me about his failed marriage, his daughter who barely spoke to him, his paintings that never quite sold for enough. I told him about Thomas, about the loneliness of widowhood, about feeling invisible in a world that stopped seeing women past a certain age. "You're not invisible to me," he said one evening as we stood in front of a Ratco at the museum. "You're the most visible person in any room." It was romantic and ridiculous, and probably a line he'd used before, but I believed him anyway. For 3 years, we existed in that liminal space between friendship and something more. Nothing physical ever happened. A touch of hands sometimes, his arm around my shoulders as we walked, but nothing that crossed the line into betrayal. Until the red dress. It was my birthday, my 53rd. Richard had insisted on taking me shopping downtown to the boutiques I would never enter on my own. "Pick anything," he said. "Anything at all." I saw it in the window, a red dress that seemed to glow from within. Silk, with a fitted bodice and a skirt that swirled when you moved. The kind of dress that demanded attention. "I can't," I said. "Where would I even wear something like that?" "To dinner with me, tonight." "Richard." "Lorna," he turned to face me on the sidewalk, holding both my hands. "You spend your whole life making yourself small, making yourself acceptable, dressing in beige and navy, and apologizing for taking up space. Just once, just for one night, let yourself be seen." I bought the dress. I wore it that evening to a restaurant by the river, and I felt like a different person. Not younger, not trying to reclaim something lost, just fully, magnificently myself. Richard looked at me across the table like I was art. He said, "This is who you are. Don't ever forget it." That was the night Margaret saw us. She'd been at the same restaurant with Harold and another couple. I didn't see her until we were leaving, but the look on her face told me everything. Shock, judgment, and underneath it all, something that looked like envy. The next day she appeared at my door. "We need to talk," she said, pushing past me into my kitchen. "What were you doing with Richard last night?" "Having dinner? Is that a crime?" "With my brother-in-law, wearing a dress like that." "A dress like what, Margaret?" "You know exactly what I mean. A dress that says things." "You're acting like a teenager, Lorna. It's embarrassing." "For whom?" She paused, her mouth opening and closing. "For everyone, for the neighborhood, for your late husband's memory. Thomas would have loved that dress. He always said I should wear more color." "Well, Thomas isn't here anymore, is he? And you're parading around with Richard like some kind of... Say it, Margaret." "Like you're still young, like you still matter in that way." There it was, the truth underneath all the judgment. The belief that women like us, women past 50, past 60, should fade politely into the background, should wear beige and keep quiet and stop wanting things. "I think you should leave," I said quietly. She did, but not before saying, "Don't come crying to me when Richard breaks your heart. Men like him don't end up with women like us." She was right about one thing. Richard did break my heart. Not through cruelty or betrayal, but 3 months after the red dress, he stopped coming to Maple Street. His visits became less frequent, then stopped entirely. His calls became sporadic, then ceased. I learned later that he'd moved to Santa Fe, chasing some opportunity with a gallery there. He sent me one letter, handwritten, beautiful, full of apologies and explanations and promises that this doesn't change what we had. But it did change everything. Because what we had existed in those stolen moments, those in-between spaces. And once those spaces closed, there was nothing left. I kept the red dress. I hung it in the back of my closet, behind all my sensible clothes. I take it out sometimes, late at night, and remember what it felt like to be seen that way, to be fully myself, even for just one evening. Margaret never mentioned Richard again, but the judgment remained in her eyes every time she looked at me, in the way she'd pause when she saw me in my ad, as if checking my outfit for appropriateness, in the small comments about age-appropriate behavior and dignity and knowing one's place. For 20 years, I let those comments settle over me like dust. I wore my navy cardigans and my sensible shoes. I faded into the background the way women like us are supposed to. Until that Tuesday morning by my roses. Until Margaret looked at my yellow sundress and told me I was too old to be stylish. That's when I remembered the red dress and the woman I used to be, and the fact that Richard Hartley, wherever he was, had once made me believe I deserved to take up space. The call came on a Thursday evening. "Harold, this is Harold Hartley." I almost dropped the phone. Harold hadn't spoken to me directly in years, not since Margaret had poisoned that well with whatever story she'd told about Richard and me. "Harold, is everything all right?" "It's Richard." His voice was thick, unsteady. "He passed away yesterday. Heart attack. He was in his studio in Santa Fe and just collapsed." The room tilted. I sat down hard on my kitchen chair. "I'm calling because I found your address in his things. You were the emergency contact in his wallet. I didn't realize you two had stayed in touch." "We hadn't," I said softly. "Not for years." "Oh, well, the funeral is Sunday, 2 o'clock at Riverside Chapel. I thought you should know." After he hung up, I sat in my kitchen as the light faded outside. Richard was gone. The man who'd made me feel visible, who'd bought me a red dress, who'd existed in those beautiful in-between spaces of my life. Gone. I thought about calling someone, but who? My children lived across the country, busy with their own lives. My friends from book club wouldn't understand. Margaret certainly wouldn't. I was alone with this grief, just as I'd been alone with the joy 20 years ago. That's when I saw it, through my kitchen window, Margaret walking past with her grocery bags, her beige cardigan buttoned up despite the warm evening. And I knew exactly what I was going to do. Sunday arrived with perfect weather. Sunny, warm, with just enough breeze to move the trees. The kind of day that seems disrespectful to funerals, too beautiful for grief. I spent the morning in my bedroom, preparing with the care of someone going to battle. I showered and dried my hair, leaving it done the way it used to be. I did my makeup carefully, not heavy, but present, visible. I found my good jewelry, the pieces Thomas had given me over the years. And then I went to the back of my closet and pulled out the red dress. It still fit 20 years later, with a few more lines on my face and gray in my hair. The red dress still fit like it was made for me, like it had been waiting all this time for exactly this moment. I looked at myself in the full-length mirror. The woman looking back at me wasn't trying to be young. She wasn't trying to be anything except herself. bold, present, unapologetic. Margaret had told me that morning by the roses that women our age should know our place, should fade into beige respectability. But Richard had taught me something different. He'd taught me that visibility is a choice, that taking up space is an act of defiance, that a red dress is never just a red dress, it's a declaration. I grabbed my keys and drove to Riverside Chapel. The funeral was exactly what I expected. Tasteful flower arrangements, soft organ music, a respectable crowd of people in black and grey and navy. Richard's daughter was in the front row, crying into a tissue. Harold stood beside her, looking older than I remembered. And there, in the third row, sat Margaret. Beige dress, beige shoes, beige everything. The picture of appropriate mourning. I walked down the center aisle in my red dress. The whispers started immediately. Heads turned, eyes widened. I could feel the shock rippling through the room like a stone thrown into still water. Margaret's face went white, then red, then white again. She stared at me like I'd materialized from her worst nightmare. I didn't sit in the back. I didn't hide in a corner. I walked straight to the fourth row. Close enough to be seen, far enough to not be disrespectful, and I sat down. The service began. The pastor spoke about Richard's life, his art, his passion, his complicated relationships. His daughter gave a eulogy, her voice breaking as she talked about the father she wished she had known better. And through it all, I sat in my red dress, feeling Richard's presence like a hand on my shoulder. This wasn't about disrespect. This wasn't about making a scene. This was about showing up as my full self to honor a man who'd seen my full self and celebrated it. After the service, people filtered out to the reception hall. I stayed in my seat looking at Richard's photo at the front of the chapel. He was younger in the picture, his hair still dark, his smile still mischievous. "Excuse me." I turned to find an older woman standing beside my pew. She was elegant, probably in her 70s, wearing a black dress with a bright silk scarf. "I had to tell you," she said, her eyes twinkling. "That dress is magnificent, and your courage to wear it here is even better." "Thank you. I'm Diane, Richard's ex-wife." "Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to." "Please." She sat down beside me. "Richard told me about you years ago when we were still on speaking terms. He said you were the one who got away, the one he was too scared to fully commit to." "He said that?" "He did. And he kept that receipt, from the dress. Had it in a box with your letters and a photo from some art gallery. His daughter found it when they were going through his things." She smiled. "He never forgot you." My throat tightened. I never forgot him either. "I know. I can tell." She patted my hand. "That dress isn't about revenge or pettiness. It's about love. About showing up fully for someone who showed up fully for you. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." She stood, squeezed my shoulder, and walked away. The reception was in the hall next door. I considered leaving, just going home and letting the dress speak for itself, but something pulled me forward. I walked in, poured myself coffee from the service table, and stood by the window. Margaret appeared within minutes. "How dare you?" Her voice was low, shaking. "How dare you show up here, dressed like that, making a spectacle?" Making a spectacle? I turned to face her. I'm wearing a dress to a funeral. A red dress to my brother-in-law's funeral. It's disrespectful. It's inappropriate. It's what he would have wanted. She stopped, her mouth hanging open. Richard bought me this dress 20 years ago, I continued quietly. He told me to stop making myself small, to stop apologizing for existing, to stop letting people like you tell me how women our age should behave. People like me? Yes, Margaret. People who think women past a certain age should fade into the background, should wear beige and stay quiet and stop wanting things, stop being seen. That's not. I never. You told me this week that I was too old to be stylish, that women our age should dress more appropriately, more dignified. I set down my coffee cup. But dignity doesn't come from making yourself invisible. It comes from showing up authentically, even when people judge you for it. You and Richard, her voice cracked. Everyone saw you that night at the restaurant, in that dress, looking at each other like we mattered, like we were still people with desires and dreams and the right to take up space. I stepped closer. That's what bothered you, wasn't it? Not that I was with Richard, but that I looked happy, that I looked alive. Margaret's eyes filled with tears. You don't understand what it's like to watch your husband's brother look at another woman the way Harold never looked at me. To see someone our age wearing dresses like that and feeling invisible, I said softly. She nodded, a tear spilling down her cheek. I do understand, Margaret. I understand it better than you think. I picked up my coffee again, but the solution isn't to make everyone else invisible too. It's to remember you have permission to be seen. I left her standing there and walked to the photo display Richard's daughter had set up. Pictures of Richard throughout his life, as a child, a young man, an aging artist. And there, tucked in the corner, was a photo I'd never seen before. It was me, in the red dress, standing in that restaurant 20 years ago. Someone must have taken it without us knowing. I was laughing at something Richard had said, my head thrown back, the dress catching the light. I looked so alive, so present, so fully myself. Richard's daughter appeared beside me. You're Lorna. I am. She smiled through her tears. Then I'm glad you're here. And I'm glad you wore that dress. It's perfect. I drove home as the sun was setting, the red dress still glowing in the driver's seat beside me. When I pulled into my driveway, I saw Margaret on her porch, still in her beige dress, watching me. I could have ignored her, could have gone inside and let the day end with that final word. Instead, I walked across the street. Margaret. She looked up, her eyes red from crying. The dress isn't about you, I said. And it's not about revenge. It's about remembering who I am when no one's watching, when no one's judging, when I stop worrying about appropriate and start worrying about authentic. I've spent 35 years being appropriate, Lorna, being the good wife, the good neighbor, the good everything. And what did it get me? A husband who falls asleep by 9, children who visit twice a year, a brother-in-law who looked at you the way I always wanted to be looked at? Then stop being appropriate. Start being you. At 67? Especially at 67. I sat down on her porch step. You told me we're not 20 anymore. You're right. We're better than 20. We're wise enough to know what matters and brave enough to stop pretending we don't want it. Margaret was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, What color would you choose if you could wear any color? I smiled. What color calls to you? Purple. Deep purple. The color of those irises that bloom in spring. Then wear purple, Margaret. Wear it to the grocery store. Wear it to church. Wear it in your own garden on a Tuesday morning. And if anyone tells you it's inappropriate, remember that you're not living for their approval anymore." She nodded slowly, something shifting in her face. Not quite forgiveness, not quite friendship, but maybe understanding. That night, I hung the red dress back in my closet. But this time, I moved it to the front, right where I could see it every morning when I chose what to wear. Richard was gone, but what he'd taught me remained. That visibility is resistance. That aging is not an excuse to disappear. That a red dress, or a purple one, or a yellow sundress is never just fabric and thread. It's a declaration that you're still here, still present, still taking up space in a world that would prefer you fade quietly into the background. The next Tuesday, I was watering my roses again. Same yellow sundress, same morning routine. Margaret walked past, but this time she wasn't wearing beige. She was wearing purple. She stopped at my gate, and for the first time in years, she smiled at me. Not the warning smile, not the judgment smile, just a smile. "That's a beautiful dress, Lorna." "So is yours, Margaret." She continued her walk, her purple dress swaying with each step, her shoulders a little straighter than before. I turned back to my roses and smiled. I didn't come to mourn. I came to remind. And in the end, I reminded more than just Margaret. I reminded myself. My name is Lorna Mitchell. I'm 67 years old, and I'm done apologizing for taking up space. Did you like my story? Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next live story with love and respect.